Automated full-size buses fundamentally transform public transportation, providing reliable and safe services in all weather conditions.
To welcome Peter and Ali and George to the stage to tell us a little more about their real-life experiences of getting some of the tech that we've been discussing in such detail this morning, actually seeing it happen. I'm just dropping everything here, but I'm terribly organised, really. I really am. I've got it all together. So if you want to just, I think, first of all, should we start with you, Peter?
We can do.
Yeah? Peter is Scania. I think why don't you tell us about your real-life implementation of automated vehicles?
We actually do several. We've been doing autonomous drive in the mining industry for quite some time, where we now go driver out. We've been doing so for quite some time. That is done in Australia. And this week we actually launched our customer pilot program when it comes to commercial goods. We've been running commercial goods in Sweden for 3 years, and now we're doing that launch into customer scaling in Europe. Of course, then with the safety driver on board, but we're doing it integrated with our customers in several places around Europe. So,
set the scene, paint the picture. What would we actually see?
Someone said before that it's boring, and it is. I mean, it's truck running up and down. The only thing is that it's driving itself. So we're transporting, and what we're trying to do, but we're not trying to do anything major difference. We are just adding in a digital driver into our truck. That is then implemented into our customers' TMS or FMS system. So we are just providing the vehicle as we do today, the services we do today, add in the driver, and then integrate into our customer systems. So the customer can then transport their goods and steer the goods as they do today. So we're not taking a bigger part than adding in the driver in the equation.
Okay. Ali, you are at ADASTEC, and tell us exactly how you're implementing this tech.
At ADASTEC, we develop level 4 automated driving system for full-size public transportation buses. So our category is full-size public transportation buses.
And where is this? Whereabouts do you do this?
Our first deployment was in US, in Michigan State University, and it has been announced in April 22, first deployment in US, and our operation is in mixed traffic, open public road, carrying paying passengers with the approval of NHTSA. Similarly, in Europe, our first deployment was in Norway, in city of Stavanger, and it's again operating in mixed traffic, open public road, and carrying paying passengers with the approval of 2 North and Norwegian road authorities. So, frankly speaking, our product is a commercially available service for the usage of public transportation operators. And we have so many other deployments in US, like University of Buffalo, like New York City, JFK Airport, which is ongoing. Most of the projects which we sign, they are funded projects, so it takes some time for the preparations, analysis, and make ready system to running on the field.
George, let's hear from you. What happens at Waymo?
Sure. So Waymo is a company working on improving safety and mobility. We developed technology that we call the Waymo driver. It's a hardware and software to create a fully autonomous vehicle operation. We started as a Google self-driving car project in 2009, became a separate company in 2016, and in 2020 launched the world's first fully autonomous commercial ride-hailing service in Phoenix, Arizona. Today, that's a 225 square mile area of Phoenix, Arizona, 49 square miles in San Francisco, serving real people, real customers, day in, day out. In 2023, that meant serving nearly 700,000 people and 700,000 rides, and ultimately providing a service that's 24/7. services getting people to school in the morning, helping people get to work, helping people who have blind, low vision needs get to where they need to go with accessibility features in the vehicles. It's something impacting real people day in, day out, and we're excited to be scaling to more cities soon, including to Los Angeles, where we're already fully autonomous and testing now, and Austin, Texas, our 4th city. So no plans for the United Kingdom yet, but we're very, very excited to be here and to really see how much the progress for legislation and future secondary legislation can develop to create the right conditions.
And sort of what kind of vehicles are available then? What's the user experience?
Sure. So the user experience is a Jaguar I-Pace vehicle, so 5-seater vehicle. It's fully electric platform, and that makes up our fleet today. It's outfitted with Waymo's tech. It's exactly the kind of experience that is just going to be familiar to passengers. It doesn't have reversible seats. It doesn't have removable controls. It's just a car. And to the end passenger, it's key questions like, is it going to get me to where I need to go on time? Is it comfortable? Can I adjust the air conditioning? It's these simple questions that we might all take for granted, but actually make up a really big part of the passenger experience when you're running a real service like this for real people.
Okay, so interesting. Okay, so it's obviously working for you all. That's why you're here. We want to hear about, how hard it's been, though, to get to this point. I mean, Peter, have you encountered a lot of challenges in the particular districts, perhaps, or geographies? Tell us a little bit about the experience of getting to the place where you are now.
It's, I think, as George is saying, I mean, we've done this for a long time. And handling new technology is always challenging. So going back in time, I think one of the major problems we've had is compute power. That is no longer the case. So being able to handle enough data in enough space of time. The compute power is now at a level that is equivalent to what we need. And also the sensors and so on, the solutions are there. So the technology is no longer a hinder, which it has been before. So if you go back in 2-3 years, I would have answered the question saying that we are running late because of the technology is not there. Today, that's not the case any longer. Technology is actually ready to be deployed. Now we're seeing that we actually have problems with legislation rather than the technology. So we are ready to go. We were doing driver-out scenarios with Waymo doing that in the US. We're doing it in Australia and so on. So the step is not a far-fetched future any longer. So moving forward here is actually the legislation will be a hinder if we don't speed up.
I mean, Ali, did you find that you were pushing at an open door, to coin a phrase, where when you were wanting to
To open the door, the major struggle was to collaborate with the stakeholders. So we have strategically decided that we will be very much open to the stakeholders because we are developing a product which is rules are defined by someone, operation is done by someone, approval is done by someone, and the usage is by someone. So we did a success story. We collaborated with all of them. At the first place, we did describe them what we are talking about, what is our technology, what is our architecture, what is our data production. Then, as one of the speakers said, they gave us so many questions, relevant, irrelevant. And they discussed in between themselves. Finally, a task came to us when we achieved it. So, collaborating with the stakeholders, you are making product all together. And we are the deep tech team, they are the authority and users. So with the collaboration, at the end of once we came to wheels on ground, then they did approve our operation because we created the product all together. And the total solution is basically depending on the guidance, not the technology people. In industry, we are good engineers. We are good listeners, and we learn so much, and we execute those as a result. We share the data with the authorities in the content, format, and frequency which they are looking for based on the standards updated by EU and NHTSA committee. So that's how we did succeed. And next week on Monday, we will have a kickoff meeting in Netherlands, Rotterdam Airport project, with 2 buses operating from airport terminal building to metro station. We insisted to have, again, all the stakeholders to listen to them, to get their requirements, comments, and common decision is task for us to execute. That's what we did.
It's interesting. Forgive me if this is obvious to the rest of the audience, but it strikes me, you know, when you said you started in the university, I can imagine that was quite a controlled environment. When you're talking about going from metro station to a terminal building, you know, there's a lot more potential hazards, I guess, and potential interaction with other vehicles and so on.
We started in Michigan State University campus, and if someone has been there, it is kind of an open traffic. You know, it is. It is a campus area, but it is more crowded than any other areas, public areas. So first, they did allow us to make tests in closed area with no passenger. Then data sharing, reporting, then experiencing with the reference groups on the demo drive and test drive. Then they qualified us to move open public road, but with no passengers. Again, same process, data sharing, report sharing, and reference groups, demo and test drives. Finally, they did allow us to operate mixed traffic, open public, with carrying passengers. Now we are at the stage that we will have approval for standing passengers, because to get the approval of standing passengers, you need to achieve a certain criteria. As you know, as I mentioned, our vehicle is full-size buses, and class 1 vehicle means there is no seat belts, there are standing passengers, all these ladies with children, with bags, so the driver quality should be very comfortable, and to achieve those, on the technology side, we have to comply with all the criteria required by the authorities. And frankly speaking, our quite strong engineering team, we create the data very transparently. We show them, they guide us. Make it 3, not 4, we make it 3. Make right 3 degrees, not 4 degrees. We make it 4 degrees, then they approve it.
Interesting. And so, George, with your experience, was there a sense that there was a need that you needed to meet, or did you go in and sell quite strongly?
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally when you're building tech at the beginning and you're trying to develop the use case, it's looking at the use cases where the demand is growing. And we started in 2009, and by 2012, 2013, when we decided to focus on a fully autonomous use case, ride-hailing was really picking up in the United States. And we really saw a substantial uptake from younger populations, people using apps to hail vehicles, really kind of a tech-forward mentality that aligned quite well with the commercial approach we wanted to take. But it also lined up well with all of the management that goes into a fleet like this. Setting up the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, depots for vehicles, customer support, rider support specialists, remote assistance to provide guidance to the vehicles, specialized driver testing and training jobs. These are really skills that don't exist in the common environment today, but have to be put under one roof. That's where a fleet operation use case really made a lot of sense to be deployed as one of the first ones. But it's taken a lot of testing to get here. 13 US states, 40 million miles of testing with test drivers, tens of billions of miles of testing and simulation, and now more than 10 million miles of operation without a human driver. It's taken a lot to build what we refer to as the world's most experienced driver, and there's still more experience to be gained. So that's where the learning and the work never stops. I think, as Ali mentioned, the trust building doesn't either. Whether it's with governments, local police officers, whom we've trained thousands of in the last couple of years alone, local firefighters, non-governmental organizations, business groups, school councils, right? Yeah. These are all of the groups that have an impact in your daily lives today.
I'd imagine the PTA would probably be one of your harshest hurdles to get over.
But I think you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
When you have a system that's following the speed limit at all times, it's a system that you can trust is always going to be doing that too, especially for critical areas like school zones.
So what has the response been? Or tell us a few stories from those early days, because I would imagine that you had mixed response. You must have done. I mean, there must have been some issues to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the biggest response and the biggest concern that people had was frankly not getting enough out of the service. The speeds were too low in the beginning. The geography was not big enough. The system at the time couldn't handle rain. Now it can. And so to get from that to this fully autonomous service, this isn't useful in my life to, oh, actually this is. And just over a week ago, we had one of our earliest riders who's legally blind posted a video about how he and his wife made a decision to purchase their home after they got married, partly based on whether the Waymo service territory was in the vicinity of the home. And it's a story like that for me. This is a rider that's been in the service for 5-6 years, from the earliest pilots with drivers to the driverless testing to the fully commercial operation. We're seeing real impact for real people, and that's so special. In the early days, people just imagined this was fantasy and science fiction. Now it's become science fact, especially for a city like Phoenix.
Yeah. And in terms of the legislative structure and so on, you said you've obviously had to have a lot of interactions with different bodies. How has that process been? Very different city to city, state to state?
I would say different from state to state, city to city, country to country.
Yeah.
And it started in 2009 when we began as the Google Self-Driving Car project. It's gone through 3 presidential administrations in the United States, but it was extremely important that the US issued guidance in 2016, not legislation, not regulation, allowing fully autonomous vehicles to operate on US roads and full enforcement authority that the US government had to apply to automated driving system equipment. And that really helped enable states like California and 39 others to issue legislation, regulations, executive orders to allow this tech. It took time. In California, it took about 10 years from legislation to complete regulatory regimes. There are 7 permits for autonomous vehicles in the state of California alone, depending on the kind of use case that you have. But ultimately, that is in place now. And what we're inviting governments to consider is take the best of the lessons learned of a state like California, of a government like the US, of the work that they've actually also put into the United Nations, which has also been considering guidance for years. And let's not reinvent the wheel every time we consider this. The societal challenges and questions that you're facing here in the UK, they aren't that different from what we've faced in the US or what other countries that have AV regimes now, like France, Germany, Japan, have all considered and found solutions for. We're here to help see if there's some commonalities in approaches that can be taken.
I mean, Ali, obviously you operate in the States as well. Have you found that you've been able to benefit from some of this, this regulatory work that's taken place?
Yes, we did. Frankly speaking, when you talk to regulatory bodies, and we are collaborating with them in US and EU also, because they need data, which we are providing them. And they need cases, and how do we handle the cases to improve the our ODD's enhancement. So we collaborate with them and we provide them all the time of data and we listen to them, their requirements. And same applies in Norway. In Norway, city of Stavanger is ground zero for us. We have a very challenging customer, we, Columbus Public Transportation Operator, and very challenging authorities. They have reference groups and they are asking for improvements, and we do, and they are regularly coming, having the demo drive, test drives, and looking to the reports which we created. Frankly speaking, basic issue is, based on the standards, to create the data very realistically and to show them the printout on mathematical and graphical base. So once they see it, you get the confidence, then step by step we go further. Now, basic issue is in Stavanger case, now we are about scaling. We started with 1 bus, then 2 bus, now we are talking about 15 bus operation, and it is a very strategic decision. They had planned to make a rail system, metro system. Now they are going to replace it with BRT, operated with autonomous vehicles to optimize the cost, time, efficiency, and to use the technology in their environment, So we do struggle, but we listen to them very carefully, and we do what they want.
And then that's commercially, obviously, valuable, successful for you. And tell us some anecdotal response from the customers.
Okay. Frankly speaking, First, I would like to give you some information regarding the passengers.
Okay.
You know, since in city of Stavanger, in line number 19, regular passengers, they pay €4 and they enjoy autonomous driving. So easy, so simple. So when they get in board, they look at the driver. At the moment, we have driver on the seat because of the rules and regulations. Even though we are fully autonomous, at last 1 month statistic is 99.5% autonomous on the route. And luckily we have ring route, so it is continuously touring. And they had hesitations and concerns because the driver, if driver is active, then driver is security guard, driver is the authority. And they started to ask questions, if there is no driver, something happens, what will we do? That was first concern. And second concern, we have so many cameras inside the vehicles to analyze the behavior of the passengers. And they asked for the privacy, GDPR. So we did describe them that we have a solution of synthetic anonymization to protect their privacy. And we have intercom system between vehicle and command control center, even though there is no driver there, but there are somebody in the command control center to enhance, to analyze, and to give response in any case. And also one of the issues, you know, autonomous bus is driving on the route, and someone is standing there in the critical area. They look for bus, we look for them. Now we have made a warning system, please take your time to get the road. So that sort of experiences we had. Now, basic issue is the improvement of efficiency to get the trustee of the community and passengers, to put pressure on the politicians to create funds, to the authorities, to the industry, to create the autonomous driving system more and more. We need wheels to be run on the roads, to have the cases, to face the cases, analyze the cases, and handle the cases, improve the ODDs.
Peter, has the response to your autonomous vehicles been? Tell us a few stories of you know, how it worked at first and hopefully how it's going now.
If we split it into confined mining, which is an easier solution, because if you look in the mining industry, then you have a confined area, you can dictate everything that's happening in that space. So with that, that's a massive pull from that market. They want that because it's safety. So they want to remove the human from the equation because of safety. They don't want to have any people in the mines. So from that case, it's more of a pull of market, secure that you have the product ready and then just launch it. So the experience from our customers there is that they want to have it now or they want to have it yesterday. So it's a matter of how quick we can scale rather than that they need it or not. It's rather quick scaling and do it now in that confined area. So and if you look into commercial goods transport, and we do the autonomous solution for the whole TRATON group, so we also do operations in US. And that's where the difference between Europe and US. US is much more mature market. So if I talk to the customers in US, most of the customers have already tried out autonomy. If I talk about where do you want to use this, they know which routes they want to drive, and they now know how to use the technology into their systems. Meanwhile, in Europe, we are a few years behind. We more talk about the technology, not how that technology will change the market. For example, today, most of our customers planning routes out of the planning of humans because we have the driver's hours legislation. And you can just drive 4.5 hours. Then you need to rest for 45 minutes. And when you go autonomous, then you don't have the human in the equation. So that will completely transform how you transport goods. So I think that is a big change that the US customers understand and have tested, but the European have not.
I mean, I'm sure you heard a panel this morning exactly that, you know, in the commercial goods sector, saying, you know, fewer trucks on the road potentially, more productivity, potentially better fuel consumption, timing, the whole bit. You've actually seen it in practice in the States. Can you share some of the results? I mean, have you seen those efficiencies coming through? What kind of levels are we talking about?
Yeah, we've seen them both in Europe and US. And the majority, I think we've talked quite a lot about safety and so on, and that's one of the aspects, because overspeeding, especially in the US, the trucks are driving very, very fast, and be able to reduce the speed because you don't have to rest, but you reach the same time. And with reduced speed, you also reduce energy. So you actually get a more environmental friendly transport. So all of these aspects you see, then of course you will debate if the digital driver is better than the human driver. But if you look at the data, I don't argue today that the best driver is worse than the computer. But in general, the average driver is actually, the average digital driver is better than the average human driver. So moving forward, I mean, we've seen that in chess and everything, that humans are not better than a computer in the long run. So we will gain a lot of momentum into the efficiency of the system to get more environmental friendly transport, but also more efficient when it comes to how you plan it.
I mean, George, if you were starting again now, probably you're greatly relieved that you're not starting again now. What would be the sort of the key bits of both regulation and, I guess, sort of market awareness that you'd like to have in place? What would be the lessons that you could offer now to somebody entering the market?
Yeah, I think two lessons that I would offer. One is take a national approach early and assume that that national approach should include every piece on commercialization, because governments have staffing challenges at every level of government. There are communication challenges, always. But where the expertise lies is where the experience and regulations can be built, mature, and be revised. Because the regulatory process is never static. The first one is never the final one. So that's one lesson. The second is public education. There really is not a great amount of government-led public education on autonomous vehicles. So when we began our first fully autonomous operation at scale in Metro Phoenix back in 2017, we launched the world's first public education campaign with local NGO partners, really communicating in their voices and their words to their community why this matters. Not hearing it from a tech company, not hearing it from a developer from Silicon Valley, hearing directly is why it should matter to you. That kind of public education, while we've seen quite a bit of private sector investment in, the launch of PAVE UK, we were proud to be a founding member of PAVE Europe as well, and PAVE US, is just not enough. It has to be matched with a public education-led effort. And so I think the sooner that begins, the better, to avoid a disconnect between public expectation and public trust. Because if the public knows what the limits are, the extent of the tech, what it's capable of, what it's not, it sets a base of expectations. But if you shoot for the moon and you don't deliver, you begin to erode your level of public trust. And that's why for Waymo, you often see us talking about the things we have delivered. The safety studies that we've published in the last few years, 25 different studies on our website, including the most recent one, talking about an 85% reduction in injury-causing collisions when comparing the Waymo driver without any human being in the vehicle versus human drivers in San Francisco and Phoenix. Now, that's the kind of data you can only produce after you've removed the driver, after you've been driving in that environment, and after you have statistically credible analysis to demonstrate and showcase how safe you are. But really, it's a good example of once you have that, educate the public and make sure it fits into that regulatory regime that the regulator's expecting to understand, is this a proof point for me that this is working and that I've actually delivered on what I promised the public with that law or reg?
It's always the case, isn't it? You've got the stats there for how safe your vehicles are. Of course, there's always going to be accidents because there's a lot of other vehicles being driven by humans on the roads, right? One of the points that Ali mentioned was that the passengers in Norway were saying, okay, what happens when something goes wrong? Who do I talk to? What is the answer that you give your Waymo customers there?
Yeah, we have a 24/7 customer support team we call Rider Support.
Yeah.
It's available not only to the customer at the push of a button, or to check if they've left behind an item in the vehicle, or if there's, let's say, a rear-ending collision when we're stopped at a red light, which happens all too often, and it's the most common kind of event that AVs face in the United States. In that situation, customer support comes on, lets you know what's going to happen, lets you know that we're going to be sending a response team on site. That response team is going to be communicating with local law enforcement, and will help get you to your destination. It's not the passenger's problem, not that passenger who doesn't have a driver's license, shouldn't have to have a driver's license. That level of expectation comes from the very beginning and the very first journey. Just like today you get on an airplane, you see a safety video before boarding, it's the same thing with your very first Waymo ride. There's always a person to communicate with, no matter what could happen, even though there's nobody in the vehicle with you.
Yeah. So for new entry companies to this market, Peter, what would your advice be?
Focus on the things that makes a difference, that you can actually control. There's so many companies that are trying to solve a problem that's bigger than they can control. We started off trying to solve all operational matters. We tried to solve people transport. We solved long haulage, ports, mining. We tried to solve everything. And if you shoot like that, then you will miss everything. You need to focus on things that you think you can solve and get a massive focus on that. So going to have goods transport for us, making that focus has actually led us to be able to deliver. If we would have continued to go broad, then we wouldn't have been here. So I think that is the key for all startup or all company really, to be able to focus on the problem that you can control.
And Ali, how about you? What would be the one thing that would help now if you could write the rules?
To deploy more projects in various countries, cities, to exercise, to understand the adverse weather conditions, environment conditions, and the public's interest and requirements to be able to say that, yes, I have a product globally available. So for instance, in our case, only the Middle East is remaining, which we have already a project. Before end of year, we will execute. So in Middle East, we will experience the weather conditions, sandstorms, light reflections of the sun, and some other hot temperature operations. So once we handle those, then we will be able to say, yes, we are about to grow enough. And frankly speaking, more deployments should be done everywhere. More data should be created, and those data should be shared with the regulative bodies, authorities, to understand, analyze, and guide us how to do. So this is what we expect.
So interesting hearing you all speak. We've got time for some questions from the floor. I'm sure there's loads. If you wait for a microphone, yes, there's this person just in the middle there. If you can say who you are and where you work, please.
Hi, Charlie Roberts from Cinta. You talk about a fully autonomous service. I'm interested to know how you tackled repairs and maintenance. Was the vehicle, for example, able to drive itself to a repair centre, or were you stuck in the old paradigm of, pre and post vehicle inspections and having to arrange an engineer to come to you or book it into a garage, for example?
Is this one for you, George, do you think? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it's a great question. Ensuring maintenance and upkeep to the specifications we set, not only for what we call the base vehicle, the underlying car, and the autonomous driving technology, is important at all times. It's not only important from a regulatory perspective, in terms of the expectation the regulator has, but also from a fleet operational perspective. So post-collision, vehicle remains stopped, because a vehicle that might have been damaged or sensors damaged continuing to drive with any kind of severe damage creates its own safety risk. And so that's where we'll have retrieval teams to make sure that vehicle gets back to our depot, is operated on specifically by maintenance teams trained by us to our specifications for our sensor types. And if it can be put back on the road, if the damage is low enough, ultimately is put back into service once it's ready and requalified. But I think it's a great question and something every fleet operator needs to consider.
Any more? Yes, at the front here, this lady here. Oh, there's somebody who's already grabbed a microphone, but
sorry,
right,
hi.
We'll get to you as well, madam, don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. My name is Ian Flynn with Invest Coventry in Warwickshire. Just a question for Waymo. I think we all remember a few years ago when the deal was done with Jaguar for the I-Pace to run on the project. Just curious to know what other markets you're looking at outside the US. Are you looking at anywhere in the UK? Or what, from the US, what markets do you see around the world that where your model is deployable most readily?
And just before you answer that, the question from this lady here, and then we can see, yes, as you've got your microphone there.
Okay. Yep. Okay, yeah. I also have a question for Waymo as well. So, because I'm coming from a company called Project 3 Mobility, we are also enter this market. And I'm quite curious about the ODD, where, not actually ODD, actually the interaction of the vehicle to the general public. Because so far, when we talk about connectivity vehicles, we always talk about the experience of the passenger or any direct user of the service. But are we having, do we have the vision where we going to standardize the interaction of those autonomy vehicles to the public? Because similarly, when they see traffic light, they know, okay, red stop, green go. So when the autonomous vehicles running on the road, when the public users, the other road user would know, okay, you stop for me to pass, or whether, like, how's the interaction between that? And also the interaction with, the public sector, like a firefighter, policeman, when they say stop, we're going to, we need to investigate the person inside of the vehicle, like how you solve those interactions.
That's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of that one before. So over to you, George.
Sure.
Briefly.
Happy to take these together. So first of all, in terms of markets that companies may be considering, I would really point you to where this can be done, where there's a final commercial driverless licensing regime in place for fully autonomous vehicles. There are a number of US states, more than a dozen where that's possible, and only several countries around the world. So Germany, France, Japan, and a few more that might be coming soon, like Spain and Switzerland. The UK is not there. And so it's difficult for companies to consider the UK without a regime in place. In terms of the questions around public trust, it's important to consider that the core driving behavior of how the vehicle conservatively drives is one of the most important signals to other road users on how safely that vehicle is perceived. Does it brake in a predictable way? Does it accelerate in a smooth way? Does it yield and turn on its turn signal as it's nudging to merge into a lane? But we also have signals for other road users, let's say on our top dome, when, let's say, a passenger is getting into the vehicle, because the vehicle is going to wait for a couple of minutes for you to get in. We don't want other drivers to think, what is this Waymo just sitting here doing in the road, just for no reason, but a signal to them that, yeah, we're waiting for somebody to get in or somebody's getting out. Those are the kinds of user interactions that are extremely important. And lastly, for first responders and firefighters, we've trained several thousand the last couple of years. It's an ongoing training set of procedures, not only for basic battery fire and vehicle fire issues for an electric vehicle platform like ours, but also for how do you reach us 24/7 if you have any kind of issue? How do we handle post-collision situations? And how does that happen at the local level, the state level, potentially at the federal level? All of those issues are considered for a service like this.
And just, I think the point which was raised by this lady was, if somebody wants to get the car to stop because they want to arrest somebody who is a passenger, are they prepared for that?
Yeah, it's quite simple. In the way that police turns on their traffic lights to pull you over, Waymo's trained our system to detect those police sirens, the visuals, the lights, to make sure that if we need to be pulled over, we can be.
There you go. Well, listen, this has been fascinating. We could go on. We really could, but we mustn't. We have to stop. But listen, thank you. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to our panelists. Really interesting.